Welcome to this Legacy Project interview. It is my pleasure today to interview Phi Beta Mu Hall of Fame member Tommy Brannan. Tommy, welcome.
Good morning.
And all these interviews that I'm doing with Phi Beta Mu Hall of Fame members are special. This one in particular, because, and most of you probably don't know, Tommy Brannan started me. When I was in beginning band, Tommy Brannan was my very first band director. And so, Tommy, though, what I'd like to do is wind the clock back and let you tell us about how you got your start in band as a youngster.
Be glad to. And really it was this way. My older brother, who's 5 years older than me, joined the band in a little town of Citronelle, which you're 10 years old when you do that. And he got an Olds cornet. And that's what he started on. And when he got to the 10th grade and I got to the 5th grade, he went out for football. So I got handed his cornet. And so I played that Olds cornet for another 5 or 6 years until the valves wore out. And my mom and daddy bought me a box Stradivarius. By then I was kind of serious about band and enjoyed it. But I started when I was in the 10 years old in the 5th grade. And my band director was Joyce Petcher Klein. And she was my pastor's daughter who had gone to the university and was the band director at that time. And so then the next year she left and Troy Hoggle came in when I was in the 6th grade and I had him for 6 years. And he was a dear friend and got me really interested in doing lots of stuff in band, trying out for All-State and all that sort of stuff. We had a good time and he became a lifelong friend.
Sure, yes.
And he was just a great guy. And so that's how I got started at the little town of Citronelle.
Yeah. Tommy, and as much as you and I have talked over the years, and of course I knew Troy Hoggle very well, I did not know until about a month ago, someone mentioned to me that he was your band director. I all these years, I never knew that. So he was certainly a great guy.
Troyce was a wonderful model for me in band. Now he could not stressful things he couldn't do, but he did well relating to the kids, taking us to Mardi Gras parades, taking us to district or all-state tryouts and stuff like that. He was really good and he knew a lot of people and never forgot a person. Little known fact, he was a very good piano and organ repairman and tuner.
Yes. I did know that about him, and good with band instruments, repad and flute, repad and clarinet, whatever you want to do. But yes, I knew him when he was at Northside, which was of course I came through the program Tuscaloosa County High School, and Northside was another high school, smaller high school in the same school system, and then had the opportunity to work Troy's band camp when about the time I was graduating from college. But yes. Everybody knew Troy's and he knew everybody and everybody loved him. So, I guess having that experience, being able to see that kind of person as you were coming through, I'm sure, played a lot into it. So at what point did you decide, I think I want to be a band director?
Well, that's later on. First of all, when I graduated from high school, I went to South Alabama for a year. And I had Dr. Lacey Powell.
Lacey Powell, yeah.
And Lacey Powell was a wonderful band director, an incredible just an incredible teacher. And he started the band at the University of South Alabama. And as a matter of fact, I was in the first band offered for credit. They started one year before I got there, but that was the first year they offered band for credit at South Alabama. So I went there for a year and I got the opportunity to go to Auburn University. I had never been to Auburn, but my brother had gone there and did some FFA things. So I was interested. I had a friend that decided he was going to go up to school there. And 2 other guys I knew were going to go up from the South Alabama band were going up there. And I says, I think I'll go up there. So I went up there and I was playing in the band with Dr. Bodie Hinton and Dr. Bill Walls, and really liked the band and what they did. And I was at the time, I was a business major. And
Wow. Okay.
I did not
Yeah.
care for business. It was not something I enjoyed. I liked geology. I almost majored in geology. Uh, but anyway, one day Bill Walls walked by me and he says, "What are you doing?" He said, I said, "I'm majoring in business and like that, and I hate it." And he said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, come by and talk with me sometime." And I said, "Okay." So I thought about it. I went by his office and he said, "What are you here for?" I said, "Well, you told me to come see you." And so he said, "Oh yeah." He said, "You ever thought about being a band director?" And I says, "I like band." I said, "It's something I really enjoy." "No, I've never thought about being a band director." He said, "Well, you won't get rich." He said, "But you'll work with a lot of wonderful people, being students and musicians." And he says, "You'll really enjoy that." And so from there, I decided to switch to music in the middle of my sophomore year. Dr. Ed Klein, not Dr. Klein, Dr. Ernie, I can't remember his name, but he sat down with me. We filled up a notebook of this quarter you take this, next quarter you take this, and he put me on a schedule. I adhered to it, graduated, and that's how I got to be a band director.
I never knew that. I never knew that. Well, that was, thanks to Bill Walls. I mean, if he hadn't, how different all of our lives would have been. So, graduated from Auburn. Now you're out looking for a job, and you wound up with more than one job.
Well,
Tell us about that.
okay, so when I was graduating from Auburn and I was newly married, and so I really wanted to teach junior high and get established and learn the trade. And so I was offered a job in Hiawassee, Georgia, an Indian reservation area, and my wife really wanted to go there. I thought about Valdosta, Georgia, with Frank Budenshon, and that was where I was leaning to go. And then there was a junior high opening in Northport Junior High and Riverside Junior High in Tuscaloosa. Well, I was down visiting with my granddaddy, Joe Meinhardt, and he says, "How far is it?" I said, "I want to go to Valdosta." And he says, "How far is it over there from here?" I said, "It's about 8 hours." He said, "Yeah." He said, "How far is it up to Northport?" I said, "It's about 3 hours." He said, "Reckon you ever want to come home?" And I says, "I understand, Grandpa." So I took the job in Northport.
Yeah, yeah. And so now, my recollection, and correct me here, first it was Northport and then they added Riverside, or was it both jobs from the get-go?
That was at integration time, and they changed the setup. They had Riverside and Northport. Riverside had been the old high school. And so they had transferred those upper students to Tuscaloosa County High, and they split the students by zoning to Northport and Riverside. So I taught band at both schools my first year, traveled back and forth. And then my second year, I moved to just Riverside, where I taught band and choir. And I was a superior choir director for a couple of years and didn't know, and I knew not very much about choir, but I had a lot of really good singers, and that
Yes.
was really important.
I remember sitting in seventh grade science every morning with Mr. Wheat, and where his room was positioned, we could hear the choir warming up. So I remember those vocal exercises well. So, for those that think, I'll go out, I'll have this Cadillac schedule. So you started off back and forth between two different schools, and then the next year you're the band director and you're the choir director.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had, I went and I sang in the church choir at Northwood Hills Baptist Church, and I had Ronnie Davis was the choir director. He was also the choir director at Boatler Junior High. So Ronnie and I would talk, and he'd give me ideas. And then the person at the high school was Ronnie Lett, the high school choir director, and he'd give me some ideas. And so that was how I got to do the choir stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember back then, yeah. Superior at state contest with the choir, right?
Right.
And one thing that impressed me, of course, having been in your band there at Riverside, the literature. How did all the Grunman stuff? I mean, I remember we played Fantasy on American Sailing songs, like the Christmas concert, and Irish Rhapsody. You knew that standard junior high literature. How, with you not deciding to be a band director until into your collegiate career, where did you gain your knowledge of, the literature? Because that is so important.
Well, some of the literature from when you played in band, as I
Okay.
came through, so I picked up some of it from Troy's. But
Yeah.
when I was at Auburn, Dr. Bodie Hinton did an instrumental course for us. There were a number of us, and we all would sit in and play our instruments, and he'd give us a score to prepare and direct that group. So you
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
got a lot of different numbers from all the music majors. And that was my first really conducting experience. And I student taught in Columbus, Georgia, and John was really good to help me, let me direct, and I really enjoyed that. And he and Art Coliani, they were really good people and helped me and gave me ideas about different literature things. And then when I started teaching, Dr. John Hinton was the music supervisor, and he knew Professor Black and Dee Dee Black, and he had a system for teaching and doing pass-offs, reading
Yes.
books and stuff like that. And so I would sit up there and just go through the different things that you needed to do with my students. And you learn as a new teacher by working hard and seeing what the students are doing and what they need. And you learn from your students what you don't know. And you start from there.
And I was going to ask you about the pass off system because, again, having come through your program, that's what made me a player. Even in those early months, here's the first division band method, and here's the Rubank Elementary method for flute. I could see I'm learning a whole lot more from this book that's written, especially for flute. I'm able to play in different keys. The notes are introduced in a very logical order for flute. That thing made me a player, but that took a lot of time. So how did you find the time to listen to that many kids individually?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of times I didn't leave at 6 o'clock at night, and and you would just have to schedule it, and you just sat there and you talked. But that's what it took, and band then was pretty demanding. They expect you to cross your T's and dot your I's, and so when you went to festival and contests, that's what you did. And so I started, and I was fortunate to have some good students like yourself. And I even took one of my beginning bands to district contest one time.
Remember that? Yes.
We did not get good ratings, but at the same time, it was a good experience and started them on the right track. I actually got that from James Hall, who was the band director at Eastwood at the time.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. James had a very, very well-established program. And I think I remember that beginning band. I think your numbers that year, you had pretty much doubled the number of beginners from the previous year when I started. And I remember you loaded us all up on a bus with our music stands and everything, and we went to each of the elementary schools, did a little concert, and all the first chair players would demonstrate their instruments for the kids, which I thought at that time that's brilliant because those kids knew us. We were neighbors and everything. And it's like, well, if Frank can play the flute that well, I bet I could play an instrument too. So the numbers like doubled near about in just a year. And boy, there were some good players I remember that came out of that beginning band that you took to district contest. And I think, and you were playing some pretty honor band march, Astro Overture. I mean, that was the kind of thing that second and third year players were playing at district contest, you know, at that time and for years on. And that was happening in beginning band. But yeah, I think you're right. You developed individual players. And then when we sat down, we could play some stuff.
That's correct. And also, it must be noted that like Wayne Blackwell was at Gordo High School, Tommy Hamner was at Tuscaloosa County High School, and they were good to give me advice and recommend things to me. All you have to do is listen. So I think mentors are really good. I had on a lot of different levels. Fayette County, Jerry Bobo, who was my favorite music educator. You know, I when I saw his band sit down on stage, and it was like 140 in that concert band, and they played wonderfully. And I said, it gave me a desire to want to do that. So,
yeah, and I think that alone is kind of a drop the mic moment. You know, nobody does it alone. And for younger directors who may be listening to this interview, to have a mentor or several mentors, because, you know, you got to stand on the shoulders of giants. So did you intend to stay with junior high, or kind of what was the plan going in as far as where your career would go?
Well, a lot of things sort of happened, and I was fortunate that I had a lot of good band booster support and a lot of wonderful people. Your mother was one of them, and several other people. And when the high school came open, some of them went to the superintendent and says, "We want him for our band director." So it was sort of, and they encouraged me, so I applied. And I almost went to Gordo High School.
Really? I didn't know that. Did not know that.
Wayne Blackwell was there, and he told Bill Springer and I he was leaving. Bill had gone to Gordo, and the three of us were talking, and I looked at Bill and I said, and Wayne says, "One of you two need to come to Gordo." And I said, "Okay." And I looked at Bill and I said, "Bill, do you want to go back to Gordo?" And he says, "Yes, I think I do." I said, "Okay, I'll go to County High and you go to Gordo." And we had a good relationship, and I enjoyed it. Then, you know, some other good things happened along the way. I had a lot of good students. I was able to build the band from the ground up. And there were a few kids that I literally taught from 6 through 12.
All the way through. Yes. Yes. That group that was 1 year ahead of me took them all the way through. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of good players. And so, of course, when you went there, numbers were not plentiful, but it wasn't long before you had built it where you had a really good sized second band that not only you could take to district, but got through district and went to state. How long did it take you to get it to that level?
Oh, I don't know exactly how many years, probably. I remember the first year I went to County High, it increased by 10. The next year it increased by 20. And it just, it kept increasing like that. And I was fortunate that I left some numbers, but Tom True came in the middle school, and Bill Festmeyer. Tom True was at Riverside and Bill Festmeyer was at Northport, and they started recruiting numbers, and my numbers grew. And like any program, you have to have feeder schools. So that's really what helped. And some teachers at the middle schools would send. And like you said a while ago, we would go and play for the schools. I'd load up and take the high school kids over there and play for them.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I think right off the bat, even your first year, you were getting through district with Tuscaloosa County, and you were at state contest all the time. Um, and of course, the standards back then, I think people don't realize, you go to district contest, and only about maybe half the bands might get through district and even get to go to state contest. And then from there, maybe, 30% might get a superior rating. So it was tough back then.
There was
But then-
one year in District 5, there were 36 bands and 9 got recommended
yeah.
to state.
Yeah. And then of those 9 that you get to state contest, and 3 maybe, might get a superior. So I know there were, it was choir, you were at state contest, a superior right off the bat, but it was a while at Tuscaloosa County to get the superiors. But then once it happened, it really was happening every year. Was there a turning point? Was there anything in particular that let you kind of turn the corner, where it was just Tuscaloosa County at superior, year after year after year?
Yes. And early on, building the band and building numbers, I had to teach differently, do different types of shows and more entertaining and things like that, which people liked, and that helped. But in 1982, I think it was, I was at Midwest with Glenn Spiller, and we were listening to a band from Detroit, Michigan. And it dawned on me that that band was up there and my band was that good. I thought, we can do that. And Glenn Spiller looked at me and he says, remember this, if you decide to go on that route, you'll lose some students, and you've never wanted to lose a player. Well, I thought I could do it, but no, if you start requiring people to really work and play and practice after school and have those things, to be diligent about it, then it requires something. And some are not willing to pay that price, but the ones that do excel and go forward, and they are so appreciative in later years.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And the court, and then how long at Tuscaloosa County? How many
Was
years?
I there?
Yeah.
I was there. Okay, I taught 3 years at the middle school or junior high,
Yeah.
and then I taught 27 at Tuscaloosa County High.
27 years. Wow. Wow. And so the whole career, all of that in one system. And then what led you, the decision to retire? Because things were still good, things were good. You could have probably kept going. What was it for you where you said, this is it for me?
Well, that was 30 years, and the school system itself was changing. The Bobby's middle school at that time was changing, and there was changes administratively and some things like that. We had picked up the 9th grade. Now, when I was growing the band, we only had 10, 11, and 12.
That's right. 10, exactly. Yeah.
And
you were
so
doing it
we
with
had,
3 grades and
know,
having 2 bands, 2 good sized bands
there was
with
about
just 3 grades.
There was about 200 kids in the program, and things, they started doing requirements and and I could see the numbers were going to drop. Ronnie Lett got out of doing choir and went into administration for that very reason. So the administrative things, the scheduling problems started getting a lot tougher. And I knew that it was time for somebody younger to come in. And I wanted the program to go forward. I did not want it to die when I left. So the year I left, I left and there was a large number of all-state players because my last year, it was mainly a ninth and 10th grade band. And so I was very fortunate to have a really good band that year, but I used technique books. We need to go back to that a little bit. I would do scales, all the scales every day. I would do the tips book, which I got from Dr. Ferguson.
Wonderful book. Yeah.
Right. And that was in tone and building and the 7 essentials of tone production. And then I would use the Fussell's Ensemble drill book. And those young kids were eager and they would work hard. And so we drilled every day. And fortunately, they liked it. They liked sounding good and being good. And so, you know, I just was fortunate. I'll tell you this, April Talbert now, she was had come to the middle school at Northport, and she was a wonderful teacher. So she started, my numbers were picking back up. But
Yes.
I knew that I was ready for another challenge.
Yeah. And of course, April was a student of Jerry Bobo at Fayette. So, yeah, so some of the same names throughout these interviews just keep coming back. Lacey Powell, that was part of your education. Bodie Hinton, who was my mother's band director at Tuscaloosa High School. All these names that you've mentioned, keep coming up in other interviews where, it's just kind of all intertwined. And of course, Tommy, I want to ask you one thing. You have a number of children. Being a band director, it's time consuming. Work-life balance. How did you manage to be a good band director and a good husband and father?
Well, go back to the pass-off system. Me getting home at 6 o'clock at night. I came and we were young and Tom was little. And I came in one day and Bobby packed her suitcase and she was going home to her daddy. So I had to do a lot of talking and convincing, don't, And so I made good choices then to have a good, steady, wonderful married life. And you cannot do it without a good support person. And my wife was a good support person. And my wife is very smart. And she taught the bright kids at Riverside took math and science under her. And so she knew that they were in band and she would encourage them to, consider the high school band. So, that helped. I'll go back to Tom True. Tom True's wife was at
Vestavia at elementary.
And she would encourage those kids to go into Tom's band. And then so from Vestavia to Riverside to County High, it was a pipeline. And that's what you have to have. You have to be involved. Also, I would go to clinics and I would try to learn the trade. Glenn Spiller was a really good mentor for me, and Bill Bruner.
Yes.
And then Frank Kenday and Bill Sloan were so instrumental in pushing me to do things for ABA. That they would have me host the Red Band Directors or whatever band it was the year. And so I met a lot of contacts with college band directors and programs. At one time, I think I knew just about every band director in the Southeastern Conference and around the nation. And your Midwest friends you see once a year, but you have those connections.
Yes.
Dr. Briskillo and at Southern Miss and Dr. Wicks at LSU. Those were people that invested in you. I went to an Alabama football practice game one morning to watch the LSU band practice. And I was just standing there at the sideline and Dr. Wicks was up in the bleachers and he saw me down there and didn't know me or anything. He said, "Hey, come up here." And I had me up there and sit beside him. And he introduced himself to me and I didn't really know him. I know he didn't know me. But I picked up things from him and I would do recordings. I went to the Southern Miss Conductors Conference and the Troy conference. Dr. Long was so generous of his time to me. I wish that we had incorporated Dr. Long into the ABA Secretary Treasurer. He was a powerful person in our state, and the ABA would have been a stronger position, in a stronger position had he been there, because he had connections politically.
Oh, he sure did. He definitely did. So yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, great stuff. So again, you're not doing it alone. You've got that network of good people, and you just stand on the shoulders of giants. Tommy, before we wrap up, any other words of wisdom for those who are kind of at the beginning of their career, and they're looking at the guys who have quote unquote made it? Anything else you can pass along for how to get to that next level?
Hard work. There's no substitute for hard work. And you have to love students. If you don't like students, you're in the wrong business. And so if you have a love for them, they're going to return and love you back. And students will do whatever you ask them to do. And if you do it in the right way, and if you're trying to drive them like a whip or something like that, that only works if you're in certain places for certain people. Yeah. But I think personality, you have to get the kids to buy into what you want them to do. And then you eat literature. It is really important to have method books in their hands. It is really important to give them good literature to play. One year, one of my students asked me to play a piece at state, and it was not a hard piece. And I don't know why, but I said, okay. And I got a 2 that year. And it just, and I learned, I said, why did I do that? Play good literature. Glenn Spiller and I would talk a lot about the literature to play, and recommending to each other things that we really liked, and listening at Midwest and gaining the literature and seeing all the military bands and how they do. And then programming is really important too. As you do your concerts, plan your programs and let the students enjoy it. And you learn as you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were definitely, everything I'm hearing you say is congruent with what I saw as a student coming through Tuscaloosa County High School. And I remember vividly, especially that junior and senior year, when we moved from, the pressure to change the marching show every week to more of a couple of shows that you used the fall. Once we had that marching show down, you used the fall to just put those war horse concert pieces in front of us. And maybe it wasn't well polished, but we were having a lot of notes under the fingers, and we were reading through a lot of things. I also remember the day, you're talking about the method books. I just come out of 7th grade, just come out of beginning band, and I was just tearing up that little first division book 3, where it really got technical. And you just came up and you sat the Brook method down on my music stand. And you said, here, I still have that book today.
Oh, really?
I probably need to return it to Riverside. I don't know. But and I thought, well, I need to learn how to play out of this book. And I remember to get in your advanced band in junior high, 10 major scales, 2 octaves. It was flute or clarinet. So I thought that's just what you're supposed to do. So I learned 10 scales, 2 octaves, which is exactly it's more scales and more octaves than kids have to know for the middle school all-state band for today. But you set down some expectations, and quite a few of us just dug in and and made it happen. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say, I probably am the greatest thief around, because if I saw a good idea, I would steal it. And there's not that many new things. They're true and tried and tested, and they work.
Yeah.
So if you just find those mentors and learn, I wanted my band to be as good as other ones. I could look around the state, see who had those great bands. And, you've got to want to push the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to,
Absolutely.
you've
Yeah.
got to teach and you've got to work.
Yeah. And you knew the techniques. I remember as a beginner, especially clarinet, you had a really good clarinet sound, and you would, you just pick up an instrument from a student and demonstrate something and then just hand it back. Of course, I don't know how many germs went back and forth in those days, but we all lived to tell about it. And, clarinet players, you're approaching, you're about to teach the clarion register. You'd have them hold out a note, and you just reach up and hit the register key, and bam, that upper note would just pop right out. Kid would surprise themselves. And then, they it wasn't hard. They had just proven to themselves they could do it. And then you would also, on your trumpet, you would demonstrate a lot. And that helped me, even though it wasn't my instrument, just phrasing and just the way you made things sound on your instrument made a big difference.
I still pass that along. I enjoy going now I do the church orchestra at my church, and I really enjoyed that. And I encouraged students to go play at their churches, take opportunities to play in public, to Christmas, go play at banks, and stuff like that. And you see people that I go to UAB for a medical thing, and you'll see a flute player down there just playing, maybe a piano player, or just different things. The venues are there if people just take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Tommy, this has been such a pleasure. I knew this was going to be a good interview because I've known you for so long, and I know there are so many stories. Of course, I've learned things in this interview that I did not know, and it has been a pleasure. I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of benefit from this. So thanks for you who are watching this right now. This has been Frank Buck and Tommy Brannan with another of the Phi Beta Mu Hall of Fame Legacy Project interviews. Tommy, again, thanks so much for this.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for your time and your effort to do this. I think it's very important. So thank you.